Anyway, we got that right. So anyway, it's been recorded, right? So Archon, the adopted son of Fyodor Sergeyev, who had been a close friend of Stalin, his close friend of Stalin had died in a train crash in 1921. Lenin instigated the adoption of Archon, the son of Fyodor, and there would be a good relationship, seemingly, with Stalin, right? There was such a good relationship with Stalin that he lived until 2008, many years after, a good 50 years plus after the death of Stalin. Now, the interesting thing is that this guy, Archon, right, the adopted son of Stalin, survived basically everything, right? Now, he went into Archon, right? This is very important. Went into military service in 1938 at the age of 17, and he was active fighting against German troops in World War II. All this is really important because what's key to this is his other son. He had two other sons. What is key to this is the other son. So we need to get this as a bit of background, right? Now, he was appointed lieutenant colonel at the age of 23 and continued serving in the military after the war, right? This adopted son had become a lieutenant colonel and eventually become a major general of the armies of Russia, right? And he served, interestingly enough, he served until 1981. So he served from 1938 all the way to 1981, right? So if you want to work out the maths on that, 31 plus 12,
40 odd years.
That's 43 years military service, right? Now, what I'm trying to do is I want to get into the guy and how he's treating, right? Anyway, we don't really need to know much more about this Archon, right? Other than the fact that he wrote 2 books and
what were the books about?
He wrote 2 books about the war and Stalin. Right?
I was going to say they weren't children's fiction, were they?
No, it's not going to be bloody children's fiction. No. Now, interesting enough, we don't need to know any more about that, right? Because already we can see that, oh my God, Stalin, he must have been a great guy. He had an adopted son, and he adopted the son of a close friend. This guy had become a lieutenant colonel, served in World War II, very, very active. Love it, right? But now we need to actually go with one of Stalin's. Now we know that Stalin had other children, right? But what we've got the adopted, we've got Archon, right? Which we've already done. We've got Svetlana. We got Svetlana.
Is that a girl, is it?
Yeah, Svetlana was quite close to was the closest of the 3 blood children, right? Forget the adopted child now, right? And then what we then had, right? I've just got to make sure my power's all okay. Then what we do have, we have Vasily Stalin. Okay, we had Vasily Stalin.
We've got Vetlana as a daughter, and we've got Vasily as a son.
No, we were not going to do the other one yet. The other one is the most important one. Okay, Vasily Stalin.
The other one last week, didn't we?
Yeah, we're going to touch upon him in full today. Vasily, right, was the son of Joseph Stalin by his second wife. Now, Vasily, Vasliy, was in the Air Force, and he held a few commands. He was. Let me give you a bit of an age. He was actually born he was born on the 21st of March 1921. He died on the 19th of March 1962. Obviously, March is not a good thing for the guy.
Oh,
He died at the age of 40.
In March 1962?
Yeah, 19th of March, and he died at the age of 40. Right now, what he did, he held a few commands in the Air Force, right? And basically, as the surviving blood son of Stalin, he fell from grace. He had a severe alcoholic problem, and he ended up getting sent to prison. Right?
What, for his alcohol problem?
No, because he was the son of Stalin.
He went to prison because he was the son of Stalin, right? Okay.
And end of. That's it. That's what we're going to do, right? He spent the remainder of his life imprisoned and hospitalized. Basically, when he came out of prison, right, they let him out, and then he actually died in hospital. Now, what it basically is that this son Vasily, you got military service. You know, he's very much he's very much not the massive golden boy, right? But he actually survives. He's
golden balls.
Yeah, he actually survives. He's sort of there, right?
So who now? Who's the golden boy?
This is the one we're talking about now, Vasily. Well, we're still on Vasily.
But okay.
He's still the golden boy, right? And this one, and this Vasily, you know, he drank, and he had a bit of he had a troubled character.
Oh.
Right, he had a bit of a troubled character, probably to do with the association with his dad, right? So we could do a lot more about Vasily, but what I'm going to do, is we're going to look at the other son, right? Before we go on to the other son, what we need to do, we need to look at Vetlana a little bit as well. Vetlana is a really, really interesting character because she was born on the 28th of February 1926, his only legitimate daughter. She died on the 22nd of November 2011, aged 85.
They had good lives, if long ones, apart from this one, isn't it, Vasily? Yes.
Yeah, and I'm looking at a really nice picture of Vetlana being lovingly carried by her dad in 1935. So out of all, by the looks of it, out of all the 4 children, she was the one who was closest to her dad. Yeah. And there's various other things there. And Winston Churchill described this Vetlana as being a handsome red-haired girl who kissed her father dutifully on the 15th of August 1942 when Winston Churchill visited Stalin. Churchill says Stalin looked at me with a twinkle in his eyes as if, so I thought, to convey, you see, even we Bolsheviks have a family life. So Vetlana sort of, in a way, was the perfect daughter, right? But then again, what happens there? Now, this is really interesting. What we're going to do is, so we could say lots about Vetlana. We could talk about her marriage and all the rest of it, but relationship. Right. So here we go. After the death of Stalin, after her father's death in 1953, if we look at Vetlana, right, after after Stalin's death in 1953. Svetlana worked as a lecturer and translator in Moscow. Now, this is the daughter of Stalin. This is the dutiful daughter of Stalin, remember. Her training was in history and political thought, a subject she was forced to study by her father, although her true passion was literature and writing. In a 2010 interview, she stated 1 year before her death that his refusal to let her study art and his treatment of one of her lovers, Kapler, were the two times that Stalin broke my heart, and that the latter loved her, but was a very simple man, very rude, very cruel. Right. Hang on.
Was that what that?
Hang on a minute. Let me work this out a minute. And that the latter. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really sure what that line means there.
I think it means that her father was very cruel, not that her lover was.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's right. So she's referring to, sorry, I read that wrong. So she's referring to her dad as being a very simple man, very rude and very cruel. But
she was a very intelligent woman, wasn't she?
Svetlana was a very, very intelligent woman, and
being a woman as well.
When asked at a New York conference about whether she agreed with her father's rule, she said that she was disapproving of a lot of his decisions, but also noted that responsibility for them also lay with the communist regime in general. And so we've got a little bit of an insight into after 1953. Now, the place de resistance is the son, Yakov.
Right.
Now, Yakov is a very, very important character.
So now what number son is this then? We've got the adopted son, we've got Svetlana, then we've got Vasily. So Yakov is son number 4, is child 4.
Yeah, but he was actually born, he's actually the oldest. He was born in 1907.
Right.
He was born on the 31st of March, 1907. Now, there's a massive, fascinating story with this guy. Huge story, massive story. Now, so we know it's 31st of March, 1907, and he died on the 14th of April, 1943. Yakov was the eldest of Joseph Stalin's legitimate children, right? And he came along at the wrong time. He came along when he came along into Stalin's life when Stalin was being arrested. He was being sent away when Stalin was trying to be this great rebel. This is 1907. This is not a time to be in his dad's life. In fact, he was not really in his dad's life at all. The son of Stalin's first wife, Kato, who actually died 9 months after Yakov's birth. And usually what happens is the man actually starts blaming the son or the daughter for the wife, the death of the wife. You can see that. Kato, his wife, died 9 months after the birth of Yakov, and you can imagine this is a guy. He's left with his son. He hasn't got his wife anymore. Emotionally, everything's going on. His dad's a revolutionary. Basically, Yakov was left to be raised by his late wife's family. It was like, right, here we go, take him, right? Just take him away. And the thing is, you see,
so he's raised by maternal grandparents.
That's right. So the thing is, the most important period of Yakov's life, there's no way his dad's going to be involved with his life, because 7 years later, you've got the start of the First World War. So his dad's not going to have much time for his son. Then you've got the endless revolutions in Russia. In 1917, 1918, you've got the assassination of the Russian royal family, Katerinburg. You've got, there's no way that this boy is going to have any relationship with his dad. Now, this is where we actually come into this, right? Suddenly, in 1921, when Yakov is at 14 years old, his dad wants him.
Well, it's a problem, is it?
What's that?
It's quite often the way, isn't it, that when children are younger, the family look after them, and then perhaps the men come in more later life. I'm not saying that's the usual, but Stalin then wanted a relationship with his son, or he wanted him to.
Well, when you think about it, this is 1921. This is the same year. So if we go back, 1921 is a really interesting year, because 1921 is the year that his friend died, right, and adopts Archon. Yeah. So he's asked his 14-year-old son to come along, and suddenly he's adopting another son, right? So you know, Dad, hi, Dad. Oh, sorry, I've just adopted another child. Oh, right. We won't have much time to spend with you, Dad. And then what we've got into the mix is Vasily is also born in 1921.
No,
so in other words,
who's born in 1921? Vasily.
Yeah, Vasily.
Yeah, the next. So he's, yes.
So in other words, what's happening? He said, "Hi, Dad," and there's the adopted son, and there's the legitimate son there. So he's not going to have much time with his dad anyway. Oh, and can you imagine this? The resentment that this boy has got. You weren't with me in my life, Dad, right? But you're here for these other two children. And you've adopted somebody else's son. What do you think of me? You know, this is a really influential age, 14, right? So he's brought to Moscow, where his father had become a leading figure of the Bolshevik government, eventually becoming head of the Soviet Union, as we know. Stalin just thought, Stalin didn't really think. What we think is that Stalin, from a very early stage, didn't like Yakov.
Well, it was his first son as well, wasn't it? The firstborn. Can often be tricky.
You should have loved him.
Well,
we should have been excited to see him.
Maybe he was. Like we don't know, do we?
So Stalin didn't think much of Yakov. He thought he was shy, quiet. Basically, Yakov was unhappy and tried to commit suicide several times in his youth. There was even an occasion where Yakov tried to kill himself, and his dad comes in the room. Stalin comes in the room, and Stalin turns around and says to Yakov, "Well, you can't even get that right." So Yakov tries to commit suicide. His dad comes in the room and says, "Oh, you can't even get that right. You can't kill yourself." And you know that is a really. I was reading that today, and I just thought, my God, that was very difficult. That was very difficult for me to actually take on board.
Yeah.
It's not that you know the best thing to do with somebody who tries to commit suicide is say, "Oh, go on, use more tablets, give it a go," and they say, "Oh, that's terrible." This is another level. This is like you can't get that right.
Yeah.
So what you've then got is that Yakov, on his father's insistence, enrolled in training to be an artillery officer, right? So two of the adopted son and the other son are actually very much in the military, right? So Yakov finished his training as a military officer in 1941 and was sent directly to the front to face the Germans. And by all accounts, by one account that I read, Yakov actually was a very brave fighter, but he was just overrun. Right now, what I don't want to do is actually say anything more. Right, what I want to do is talk about is sort of up the stakes, right, and go directly into the Second World War. Now, what we do have is images of Yakov released by the Germans after his capture. Listen to this. So it's on the 22nd of June, 1941, Nazi Germany and its allies launched Operation Barbarossa. That's the date. So we now got a date when the Germans actually invaded the Soviet Union, right? So we got the 22nd of June, 1941, Nazi Germany and its allies launched Operation Barbarossa. The invasion of the Soviet Union was on. Stalin ensured. So we've got what we've got. We've three of his sons involved in combat, right?
Yeah.
So and interesting enough, if you want to compare Vasily, right? Vasily's little bit of the golden boy out of the two actual, blood sons. And Archon really rises up in the ranks of the military, the adopted son, by 1943, right? But our interest is, again, in Yakov. Now, why Yakov is interesting, it's I've looked at this and I thought all he was a lieutenant. Now, okay, a lieutenant, right? If you want to do a comparison, Adolf Hitler was a corporal, right? And then you've got the ranking system would be private, corporal, sergeant, and there's lots of other little ranks like colour sergeant and lance corporal and your first class private and so on. But principally private, corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, right? So a lieutenant is sort of got a little bit of sway in the ranks, right? But he's not the same ranks as his adopted brother, and it's not the same, he's not up there, right? Now this is what I see, this is what I read is unusual, right? So they're serving on the front line, serving as a lieutenant with a battery howitzer regiment. So he's in. This is what he trained to do. He's in the artillery, right? And he was captured. He was captured during the Battle of Smolensk. The circumstances of his capture are disputed, and it's basically said is Archon said, his brother, his adopted brother, later said of his sibling, Artom's the adopted one. He actually jumps in and he says about Yakov. He said the Germans surrounded Yakov's battery. The order was given to retreat, but you know what? Yakov did not obey the order. He stayed put. Right now, Archon was able to offer this report, right? Because Archon was there. Archon was one of those who gave the orders to actually retreat. Archon said, I tried to persuade my brother. And Yakov answers, listen. Now, this is interesting. Remember, Archon is the adopted son. And Yakov says to his brother, is the adopted brother, I am the son of Stalin and I do not permit the battery to retreat. So in other words, he's saying to the adopted brother, you can bugger off, right? I am the son of Stalin, right? I don't care who you are, right? You're not the blood of Stalin. I am the blood of Stalin, and I am not retreating. You can retreat. He refuses to retreat because he wants his dad to be proud of him, right? Unfortunately, that's not the way his dad saw it, because his son surrendered when he'd run out of ammunition. Basically, there's not a lot you can do when you've run out of ammunition. And the Germans immediately identified him as Stalin's son. It's probably likely, right? It's probably likely that the Germans knew that at Smolensk there was the adopted son and Stalin's son on the front line, because what they would have done, they would have captured some Russian soldiers. They would have interrogated them and said, right, give us some information, and you can go to a prisoner of war camp instead of a concentration camp. Oh, by the way, 2 of Stalin's sons are actually here, right? So they're actively giving their officers images of what these 2 guys look like, right? And Yakov is, the one who's captured. However, the thing is, Archon wanted to give a good account of his brother because he knew what their dad was like.
Yeah.
Now, I'm actually going for this as a genuine story, because Artyom could have said, "Oh, look, your real son was just a coward, right? And look at me, I'm still here." But then again, Archon was the one who retreated. So other sources say that so after other soldiers were captured. After the soldiers were captured, it said that Soviet prisoners of war told the Germans that this is the thing, that there's 2 stories, and we've got this story from a Russian, but the Germans say that they write down references to Soviet prisoners of war who fought alongside Yakov, who claimed that Yakov willingly surrendered. Right? So who do you believe? Who do you believe? I'm actually going to Artyom's story, that he stood the line. That's the type of thing I would do. You're going to retreat. I want to make my dad proud of me, right? I'm going to stay here. Artyom did not need to do that. He could have just said, "Yeah, Dad, your son is a coward. He just surrendered." But the official records go along with the fact that he just gave up, unless it was what Stalin wanted people to think. But then again, did Stalin want his son, the gold? He wasn't a golden-eyed son, right? But did he want people to think that a son of his own blood had actually surrendered? So we got all these different accounts. The Germans announced the capture of Yakov 1 month later, on the 19th of July, after the start again. That's not 1 month later. 3 days later, on the 19th of July, because the Battle of Smolensk was on the 16th of July. 3 days later, on the 19th of July, Stalin, the capture of Yakov was announced by the Germans. We have actually captured Stalin's son. This would be the same. Well, Adolf Hitler didn't have children, but I don't know. I don't know if we could talk about an equivalent. Churchill's son. What reaction that would have had? I can't really say.
I mean, but I think that Stalin would have had to have put on a face, wouldn't he?
And this was the face of Stalin, as we say. The face of Stalin was.
He really truly felt that as another matter, isn't it?
What Stalin said to the news was, he reacted negatively because he had previously ordered that no soldiers were to surrender. So the idea that his own son had done so was seen as a disgrace. He was angry with Yakov, his oldest son, and he would have preferred Yakov to have killed himself. But can you remember that instance where he walked in the room? Yeah, and Yakov tried to kill himself. So Yakov's not very good at trying to kill himself. So Stalin sort of knew this on the surface, what he felt inside.
The thing with the Nazis are offering to trade him, I mean, he might already have been dead. They've done that before, haven't they? Where they
it's a difficult
say,
one.
you know, it is tricky. This is, I think there's a lot of propaganda around this, to be honest.
So Stalin was angry that Yakov hadn't killed himself, and it's that the motives of his surrendering and so on, sort of, you know, we don't really know what's going on. So.
No.
So anyway, as a prisoner of war, in an attempt to conceal his identity, Yakov immediately took off his officer's insignia to pass as normal soldier, but people identified him, and basically, as he was being interrogated by the Germans, the Abwehr, which is the German military intelligence, which is basically MI5 of the Germans, Abwehr. Abwehr's German military intelligence worked out it was Stalin's son straight away. This was a guy who was very critical of what was going on, and this was somebody who actively was, you know, they knew it was Stalin's son. And he was basically and then, strangely enough, what we do find is that Yakov, whether this is true or not, Yakov was praising Germany as being the more organized nation in Europe, because Britain had been already defeated. Russia was being actively defeated. The Germans intended to use Yakov for propaganda against the Soviets. He was pictured on leaflets dropped over Soviet soldiers, showing smiling with his captors. The back of the leaflet was part of a letter he wrote to Stalin shortly after his capture. It said as follows. Again, I'm weird whether this is genuine or not. Dear father, I have been taken prisoner. Oh, hey, I am in good health. I will soon be sent to a camp for officers in Germany. I am being treated well. I wish you good health. Greetings to everyone. Yasha, Yakov. The Soviet Union responded in kind via propaganda. And then they basically, what they did was that they awarded Yakov with the Order of the Red Banner for his actions at the Battle of Smolensk. So one minute they're trying to say he's a bit of a coward, and then officially they're saying, oh, actually his brother is actually saying he fought bravely. You know, he didn't retreat. He was actually this would have been something Adolf Hitler would have admired, because Adolf Hitler's orders were not to give any ground, not to retreat. Russian orders were not to surrender, which is a different order than not to retreat.
Not retreat.
However, as the war progressed, the Russians had a similar thing to the Abwehr, that any Russian soldiers seen retreating were shot by the Russians.
Yeah.
So in other words, basically, so we don't have a Yakov thing at all, right? If you retreat, you're shot. If you surrender, you're shot, right? So this doesn't happen again. So after a while, you weren't to retreat either. You were going to be shot anyway. So you had no way out of it.
You're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Exactly. So here we go. What happens next is he's sent to Berlin, right? He would have met Joseph Goebbels, who was the Nazi propaganda minister, and he hoped to use him in Russian language radio broadcasts. which failed to materialize. And you know who else also did broadcast? Lord Haw-Haw.
Uh-huh.
Choice. You see the links there? There you go.
Yeah.
Very wary of time now. So
yeah, it's 17:52. So do you want to leave it here? Because you've got to be.
what I'm going to do, I'm going to take us to he was moved to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, right? Now he was actually moved to Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Now Sachsenhausen concentration camp was a bit of a camp that lots of individuals were actually taken to, and prisoners were treated harshly, fed sparingly, and killed openly. Right. So this is Sachsenhausen. And this is a concentration camp in Germany. Lots of concentration camps were in Poland, but this is a concentration camp in Germany. Now, this is the thing. While interned there, obviously Sachsenhausen in the early part of the war, 1941, was okay, right? But eventually it wasn't that. He was constantly frequented by visitors who wanted to meet Stalin's son. And to be photographed alongside Stalin's son. He was like, this is Stalin's son. Let's be photographed alongside him. Basically, this was something that would really distress him, because at Sachsenhausen, right, strange enough, there were actually British prisoners of war there. They were actually at a concentration camp, which was quite strange. And he hated the British. This is Stalin's son. He hated the British, right? So he'd have constant quarrels with these British prisoners of war. And then after the Battle of Stalingrad in February 1943, it's believed that after 2 years, Stalin's son is still alive. After the defeat at the Battle of Stalingrad, where I'll give you another fact. At Stalingrad, the Germans left behind half a year's worth of their entire yearly production of armor.
Wow.
So in other words, they left tens of thousands of trucks behind, tanks, everything at Stalingrad. So that'll be a good one to do, but not today. And then basically they wanted to exchange him. The Germans were prepared to exchange Stalin's son for Frederick Paulus. Frederick Paulus was the field marshal who surrendered to Stalingrad, right? Which Hitler hated. So in other words, Stalin hated his son surrendering, and Hitler hated Paulus surrendering. The reason why Paulus was made a field marshal just before he surrendered to Stalingrad was because no German field marshal had ever surrendered in the history of German warfare, right? That's another thing. So basically the Germans said, look, we'll exchange him for Paulus. And Stalin said, no, we're not gonna exchange Paulus for this thing called my son. Stalin said, and we'll finish on this, Stalin said, just think how many sons ended in camps. Who would swap them for Paulus? And basically, again, just think how many sons ended in camps. Who would swap them for Paulus? Were they worse than Yakov? So what they're trying to say is that anyone who surrendered, why would they exchange? Why would they exchange anyone in Germany who had surrendered for Paulus? Because anyone who's surrendering, any Russian that surrenders is the lowest of the low. And actually, lots of Russian soldiers that actually surrendered were actually shot by the Russians as they
went back home.
Well, no, they were shot on sight. As soon as they said, "Oh my God, thank you for rescuing us," bang, they shot them. So, in other words, if you're a Russian, it was no good. And it's there was apparently there was another plan. Hitler's nephew had been captured by the Russians, Leo Raubal, and it was like a family member for a family member. And he was actually downed because he was a Luftwaffe pilot. But that didn't come off. Hitler's nephew was going to be exchanged for this individual. So what we're going to do, we're going to call that a day now. Anything you want to ask?
No, it's very interesting, the politics. And
I tell you what, if you come on at 5 o'clock tomorrow, we'll do a tiny bit about Poland, okay?
Okay, if I can, I will. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much, Carl. Have a good evening.
You have a good evening, and I'm glad we did that. Sorry, it was really good looking at Yakov.
A bit late, wasn't I? But we've done it, which is good. We've made it.
Good.
We'll
hold Val.
Got to go and have me chicken soup.
It's better than turkey. All right, then I'll speak to you soon.
Ta-ra.
Take care. Bye. Bye. Thank you for watching. That's a bit about Stalin's son. It's a little bit of a class I teach. Yeah, I've got to go on to another class now. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.